did not want to read this book. I did not want to read this book. But I read this Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. And I just want to give a quick review, give my thoughts on this book because I was surprised by this book. I read this book in 4 days, and that is pretty good for me because I am a slow reader. I really thought I was going to read it in 2 days, but you know, holidays, traveling, all those things. I read it in 4 days and I was reading it all the time. And I was obsessed with it. I like paused all my other reading because I was reading this book. And I know I'm late. Don't judge me for being late on this book. This was a trendy book back in 2021, maybe, or 2022. I can't remember. But I would see this book at Target, Walmart, all the places, and was like, I don't want to read that book because of the cover. The cover just seemed too corny to me. I was just like, 1,000 Boy Kisses. I'm not really a romance girly. I'm more of a thriller, you know, fast-paced literary fiction for a slower pace. So yeah, I didn't want to read it, but then I saw it on Kindle Unlimited, and yeah, it got me. Reading the synopsis of the book, I was like, okay. So the book is about Rune and Poppy. They meet when they are really young, and I'm gonna try to not give away spoilers, no spoilers. They meet when they're really young. They are next door neighbors, and so Rune is coming from another country and moving with his family, and they are really young, and they kind of grow up together as next door neighbors. But then eventually, as a romance book, they fall in love with each other. But then Rune has to go back to his country, and he's of course upset about it. He started a new life here in the States. It's set in Georgia, I believe, and he's really upset that he has to go back. And him and Poppy are exchanging, you know, messages. They're writing to each other, calling each other and things like that, but then she goes silent. The girl goes ghost, and we're like, where is she? He is upset, more upset than he was in the beginning, and he just kind of goes on this rage, goes off the deep end basically. His parents don't know who he is. They're like, what is going on? And then they move back. They moved back to the same house. They kept the house that was across from Poppy's family, and they eventually find out what is going on. So the first half of the book had me hooked because I'm like, what happened to Poppy? Where is she? Like, what happened? I have all these scenarios in my head, like, okay, did she get kidnapped? Did she, like, what happened? Why did this girl disappear? Because they were so in love and, like, you know, gonna be always and forever and all these things. And so it was a really heartfelt, emotional book, and I really did not expect it to do that to me, especially in a romance book, to be honest. But this book, it had me hooked, and I was already invested by the first chapter with these characters, Poppy and Rune. I was rooting for both of them. I was like, I want to know how their lives play out and what is going on. And so I even took some notes. That's how you know I was feeling the book. What I really liked about the book is that it makes you think about your own life. It makes you really contemplate, and it has some really amazing quotes in the book. Like, I was highlighting my Kindle up, and I don't want to read them because I feel like it's going to give away the book. I love the glimpses of the family dynamics. At first, you kind of get these little touches of the family, of how they're feeling, of their reaction, because this is a YA novel. And that's another reason why I did not want to pick it up. The cover, and it was YA. I don't really vibe with YA. But this book, yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish that it was older. Like, it was, you know, they met when they were younger, but they're like 21, 22, I don't know, older. Like, it was more of a gap than 2 years, because they come back together, they're still in high school, and they're 17. So it spans from like 5 years old to 17 years old, and that's still a little young for me. And then some of the scenes with it being YA, I was like, what? But anyways, the glimpses of the family dynamics, Rune and his dad, that's how I'm gonna say, Rune and his dad, that dynamic to me was great. The male point of view of Rune, because it is dual point of view with Poppy and Rune, and that was amazing to me, that we got to see his perspective of what was going on, and not just Poppy, because sometimes we just get the female point of view. But kind of back to the YA part, some of my icks with the book, or some of my things that I don't know if I'm gonna rate it a 4 or a 5 star. This may bring it down. Right now it's a 5 star for me, because I read it. It's a 5 star for me because I read it so quickly. I was so invested in the book and was just kept coming back for more. One thing is the infatuation or obsession they had with one another. And given the circumstances, I understand it now. But at the beginning, I'm like, what is going, like, before the main plot line comes to fruition, it's like, how are they 15, 14 years old and they are so obsessed with each other? Like, the language they use, it seems older. You know what I mean? It seems like this is for a 25 plus year old relationship or characters, and so it just seemed very mature at some points, and that made it unrealistic to me, because it's like, that's how you would talk if you've been married for a long time, or you've been in a relationship or in a partnership for years and years, which they have known each other since they were 5. So maybe I'm just looking in, you know, and I don't understand, because that is not my experience. And I just know some of the things they were saying, I was like, I was not thinking that at 15, 16, 17 years old. So how are they thinking it? But I also wasn't in a relationship like theirs either. But that is one thing that I was like, eh. And then some of the paragraphs would just go on, like looking deeply into his eyes, and, you know, I touched his hand and she touched me, and it would just be paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. I'm like, okay, we get it. You're in love. But that was just one of the things I wish that was kind of reduced a little more, and that those things could have been filled with more substance to me. But just my opinion, I still love the book nevertheless. Rune's attitude, and I don't know if I'm saying his name right, because it is from another language, but that was another one of my icks or things that I did not like about this book. And again, given the circumstances, it may make sense, but I just wanted to be like, did you just really say that to your mom? Did you just really say that to your dad? Like, oh my gosh, it just irked my nerves. And as a parent, as a mom, I'm just like, at some points I just wanted to smack him and be like, shut your mouth. I just kind of wish it was for a more mature audience. And some of the scenes, I'm like, they took a trip, for instance, in the book to New York, and I'm like, how are they going and having this place by themselves in New York, and they're 17 years old? It didn't make sense to me. But things like that, it was just minor things that you picked up on throughout the book that it just did not make sense to me. But it may make sense to other dynamics, other families. And I think the more I read and understood their love for one another and the circumstances, like, okay, would I let my child do that? Would I let them experience their relationship in this way? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. One component that I also really liked was the spiritual component of it, and it was heavily not heavily, I would say. There was like 2 or 3 scenes in the book that related to spirituality or God, and I really, really appreciated that, because Rune was not very spiritual and Poppy was more so. I'm gonna try to find a quote, but there was one scene where they were on the beach. She was talking about God and the footprints and things like that, that imagery of kind of God carrying us and being with us, and I really, really like that. It made me think, like, is the author a Christian? Is Tilly Cole a believer? Because she really did, you know, mention a lot about spirituality in some of the scenes. So I enjoyed that. Also, another scene where this came up was the father dynamic with Rune and his father, and it was talking about like how his father loved him selflessly, and how even though Rune was acting out and just so upset and things like that, that his father was still there with him. I was like, that sounds like the prodigal son to me, baby. That's the prodigal son. And that's the gospel. That's the gospel. It's towards the end of the book, but there was just these themes and layers throughout that connected to spirituality and faith, and I really, really appreciated that, because some people don't want to mention that in their books, or some people are, you know, don't think it's necessary. But I highly recommend this book. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. The emotional roller coaster that it takes you on. At some points you're going to cry. At some points you're going to be like just you know, in love with them and just rooting for them. So there's a lot of emotions that went on in this book. And again, I think any book that makes me think about my life and reflect on my life, and when a fiction book does that, I think it's a good book. When a fiction book can make you really think, like, what is this all about? What's my purpose and things like that, I think that is an amazing book. I would recommend it to anyone. It is an emotional book and very heartfelt. So prepare for that. If you are an emotional person and you feel like you get attached to characters really quickly and things like that, so maybe not read it in public because you may be crying. I would also recommend you to look up their names, because that's what I did. I was like, what does that mean? What does Rune mean? What is Poppy? And we know Poppy is a flower, but it really connects to their characters as well. So that is something I would suggest, like, you know, think about their dynamics, think about their characters, their meaning of their names, the things that they say. It was really powerful. But I think after you read the book and you understand what is going on between them and what Rune is dealing with and what Poppy is dealing with, that, okay, it makes sense. Like, maybe these emotions have to come out in a way, and like, I've never been through what they have been through, and so that's probably how I don't understand, but it really gives me some empathy. I think that's the right word, not sympathy, but empathy for them, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I think this book will stick with me for a long time. And it was so surprising to me. Like, I really was just scrolling on my Kindle looking for something literally on New Year's Eve at 2 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and had my Kindle and was like, let me just read this. Let me just open this up, and it's free on Kindle Unlimited. And I started with the first chapter and I was hooked. I was hooked from the beginning. And so they do have bonus content. That's another thing. The bonus content. I forgot to mention this. The last chapter left me like, what? Like, that really happened? Like, Rune and Poppy again? How? And I thought the bonus content on the Kindle, it says new bonus content. It also gives you a snippet of the second book, the first 2 chapters, which is great. I haven't read the first 2 chapters of the next book. I didn't even know there was a follow-up book to it. Let me know if that's better than the first one, what you think. No spoilers. But the bonus content did not connect any dots for me. Like, I thought the bonus content was going to connect the dots from the last chapter and give me, like, you know, like, answer some questions for me. And it did not do that. I was, like, so disappointed in that. So maybe the next book will do that for me. Will answer the questions that I have from the last chapter of, like, how did this happen? And it goes like 10 years later, which that is not a spoiler. But yeah, it just left some questions unanswered. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that is was her purpose at the end, to like leave us on a cliff because she wants you to read the next book. And so the next book is called 1,000 Broken Hearts, I believe. I will be getting it or reading it next, I think. But let me know if it's better. It follows like the siblings in the next part, like the siblings of Rune and Poppy, to just kind of give them some shine as well. But let me know what your thoughts are. What do you think about 1,000 Boy Kisses? And do you have any like things that you did not like about it or you loved about it? Let me know in the comments, because when I was looking up the reviews on Goodreads, it was either like 1 star or 5 stars. People were not in between. One person was like saying terrible writing, worst book ever. Another was like, left me on the floor in tears crying. And so when I was looking up the reviews, I was like, I don't know how to feel about this book. And so, but that makes you want to read it more, right? And so, love you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.